Okay, hey, train the plants every day, all of them. All the subcategories of how you crossbreed them all and all that fun jive, you know. So this is number 2. I don't know, most people, you don't need to watch them all, but there were some notes in that first one I kind of forgot to mention. And, you know, for me, on Chris's material there, on his magic show and things like that, he does a lot more than just magic. And, you know, given your cards, he does talk about, you know, industry and setting up your game and things like that, which, you know, you don't want to give away all your tricks. You know, you don't want to have somebody compete against your own nature of a thing and aspects thereof. But, you know, in much of the same way, what I'm talking about here is what he covers in a lot of his videos. He may not realize that's what he's doing. I don't realize that what I do sometimes is step on those toes when we're actually on the same team in a lot of ways. But, you know, what I'm talking about in terms of the quantum nature of a thing is, you know, each of these cards is like a resume. You know, here I'm just playing Magic the Gathering games, and I actually use them a lot for psychology. You can use them like a Rorschach description or what have you. And a lot of what I talk about, without jumping so in-depthly in this field, is each category. Talking about analyzing somebody's field, or talking about how to set up YouTube, or setting up a game or a system under that principle, has a lot of effects, you know, a lot of X, Y, Z's into the example that are really hard from this point of view to determine where you're first starting. There's a lot going on in a singular conversation about anything. One, it can diverge off and get into mathematics, psychology, a business principle, an application or a particle that again can go full mathematics or whatever. I mean, it goes whichever way you want it to go as a general. If you're the one that understands these kinds of conversations and calculations into a thing. So again, you know, one of the things he taught, you know, I learned a lot from his show. You know, he'll teach you how to do, you know, the card flicking trick here. If I can do it right now, I got too many, but you know, how to do a general trick like that, and you know, how to do some card flourishings and things like that. And I thought they were great, you know, because all that same mechanics is how to do this is a lot of physics, is a lot of psychology and training, you know, this aspect to do some physical aspects here and have an end result that you want to have happen. Not only is this a trick, but how to set that trick up to do something fancy, how to do something vague in that frame state, or those given forces that make that up. Again, the idea with quantum mechanics here is you can measure the exact position of an electron, but when you begin to measure the wave function of it, it begins to break down. So if you know the exact position, that card trick, it's going to break down every other wave function that's about it. You know, all about setting up YouTube videos being the same exact particle. But if I started with YouTube videos, that calculation would have begun to break down because there's so many things that you have to know. This is simultaneously, this little motion, this little micro motion is exactly the same as something that's happening over here that is completely different, right? So again, I use as his general. Again, I'm the Shogun in this little universe here. I use him as one of my generals. As I tell you to go watch his YouTube videos, or when he just got back from his YouTube game, you know, starting with this effect and then building to the result that goes to that. Where sometimes it's quantumly in the same nature. Let's build this show, and then build to this specific effect, making that force into there. Really, there's no way to go wrong with that example as long as you've worked out a lot of the calculations, and it looks like a given flourish or an example and some of those things. And I actually use that flourish conversation, I don't know if he did it or somebody else did, but of that of the Z function is what I call it, but it's not the Z function. It's starting with this nature of an event right here. And in the quantum universe, there's a lot of things like this that can deal. First, you're going to start with this Z pattern. This is basically the fundamental to all kinds of different magic and mathematics that we kind of get into from here because we're analyzing them both as one frame. How to do YouTube videos is going to cover the same principle. The next move is this, which is going to follow the mechanics beyond that movement. but there's a lot of variable on how you position which move, which is going to relate to a different conversation, right? And I know I'd love to I keep trying to ask him this question, but I never know how to apply it right. When I go to ask him, he asks me ask everybody at the end of those videos, what would you like to see? This is what I'd like to see is, there's an infinite number of patterns that can be created, your own specific flourish. And again, I'm not the best magician in the world. But by watching some things, let's see if I can still do this, how to create, I know I can't do it right now, how to do little card tricks like this that start with little moves like this. This is 001. This is 0011. And from that we can continue a given pattern or an example or how you want to fundamentally base this. Some things are generally already out there. A lot of generals, a lot of mathematicians, they have states that are already out there. Can I recognize this as that given state? So I can name this flourish pattern after somebody's system or setup, not necessarily because they generally set it up, but because they've got a high mastery of it. They're out there using it every day in their pattern and they call it this, so it's going to be hard not to gravitate to that situation and call it that. But from that doesn't mean that there's not another given state. That doesn't mean that there's not some aspect of now I break it down differently, and I'll do something different off of that pattern or example from always gravity, or whichever version of gravity you want to break down, to, do a card trick or, whichever one of those is gonna do that. Again, I'm better coordinated in other forms and well practiced in other examples. I've got a long way to go before I've mastered everything in the universe. That makes me the G of these conversations, and even in that aspect, I'll still be fighting the hurricane when it comes up. Now I can know all this stuff, air turbulence equations that deal with resistances of the smoothness and existence of two air molecules that bump with each other that determines where that hurricane is going to go. Well, the same calculations come into here. I just use mathematics as that foundation to help me explain what I'm doing. We're going to start here. This is the Nova-Stroker's air turbulence equation. And what I could do from here is this combination of knowing the end result. Kind of generally knowing where I want to put it and how to set it up in the simplest number of moves to make it as smooth as possible in describing that example. And again, what I'd like to ask him is, show me some of those patterns. What starts this move? How many different categories of things from this move are there? And then you could put that back and say, from this, there's another given state. Let's say you do this or whatever. How many different variations? Can you go ahead and make a video on some of those sequences for me so I, as a rookie in the mathematics game, can learn a better flourish? All right, remember, mine's just what it is here. Hopefully he can reciprocate that back, and just like if I ever got that video response, I could take that and say, hey, great, now I can start to break that down, because I'm not really fundamentally great in terms of knowing flourish tricks here. But I can use that now as my special relativity example in my classroom, in my direct physics thesis, while talking about mathematics or psychology, to say, all right, what they're talking about there in the Planck spectrum is actually a bunch of given cards like this, which could be a million different frame states of a billion different categories, and any one frame state that could be all of those frame states, right? Magic is a business model. Magic is inventory. Magic is an example under those standards. This is what I've not only kind of knew, but when I had him integrate a force into this that critically mass changed the thing, helped me describe what I'm talking about, the way in terms I explain this. And again, I chop that up and I say, well, it's a little bit of YouTubing skills, it's a little bit of management, maintenance, mechanics, whatever, whatever you're good at, just put it in there, try it out, put it all in a pile, bang, and then start banging some tricks out with it, because that's the reality of it. Newton, believe it or not, for me, was actually one of the best rabbit hunters in terms of the survival game of knowing his specific field, those laws of motion that apply. When you're out there in the laws in the field, you're not going to go, all right, force 1 plus force 2 equals force 3, or you're not going to say, well, this is at rest, I'm sitting here at the campfire. That's what it's going to be. It's going to be, I'm sitting at the campfire working out mechanics, and that's gravity equals force in moment 1 and moment 2 over this radiant that can be squared. It can be platformed into millions of different things and describe gravity is what you make it. It could be, I want the end result to do this. So every move that I make, I'm on a landscaper's map, which I use in my resume application to teach quantum mechanics, quantum gravity, is to say the sequence of events has nothing to do with north, but if I don't follow that, I'm just going to be walking around aimlessly on this property. You know, just cut that blade of grass again, wasting a bunch of time and energy, a lot of diversified inconsistency in the laws of diminishing exchange, which can be described in anything. But we're using them to be this zero field that is a universal field theory to describe what's happening and what we're trying to depict here, the end result. Us as being generals is knowing a bunch of states and a bunch of fields. So again, you know, I don't mean to go overboard. You know, what I've been trying to say in those comments to them. Again, I don't have very many fans or many people that comment on my videos, so I don't think you'd have to worry about it too much there, Chris. If you do spend the time to actually watch a couple, you know, this half hour, if I make that, you know, finish this one off to the 15 minutes as well, I don't think you're going to lose very many fans over it, you know, again, and just, I look at you as a general, hopefully you'd look at me as a general, hopefully, I know you've helped me in a lot of my videos that I do, whether anybody watches them or not, you know, hopefully this can reciprocate back, and you can throw this in there in whatever form or flourish you want to do whatever you need to do. It certainly isn't locked in the principle. You know, specifically, you know, if you do watch this, Chris, you know, this is what I was talking about. Same way you were analyzing those videos and kind of scoffing at a lot of them. You know, some of them are good. You had these opportunities to kind of, hey, stop the clock here. What they did and set it up their video was great. You know, here's those really good aspects you as rooks are going to need to know, because if you don't have any videos, you don't have any setups on this aspect, go out there and freaking do it. You know, from there, crash and burn a bunch of times. Go back through your analyzation process. When you know magic or mathematics or whatever category really well, you're going to be really quick to see some of that stuff that you're going to need to smooth out. That way, not only just the general crowd ain't going to be able to see, but some of the pro dogs aren't going to be able to see, and that's going to hold you even higher as a general in these standards. And that's certainly what I'm trying to, if there was one angle for me sitting out there in the crowd that I could tell you, hey, you know, you're missing that one, it certainly isn't about your performance on the stage. You do great. But I did kind of see that, you know, card in your hand, that if you improved it a little bit better, it would totally vanish. And you can make that application for your setup, not necessarily on that stage that day, but as an overall calculation. It's going to help you improve a lot from this move right here, wherever you're starting from, or however you want to break that down, or whatever 10 different flourishes you want to set up in a given pattern, or whatever quantum jump of that nature from this one to this one, or whatever you're really good at to make that happen. And like I said, hey, use it. Use that one right there for me, man. Break down however you think that's really good. You know, whether it's right to this one or starting some other pattern of, you know, whatever variable makes that kind of trick, whatever it needs to be, because they all have that quantum aspect. And again, if all else fails, jump into mechanics. Jump into skills that inventory, application, you know, the end result, the power series, you know, get into it. You know, maybe it'll help you not just kind of sit there and, you know, kind of make it look like you're bagging on them. And I don't mean that with all due respect, but I gotta ask, you know, would you have said that if you had this in an application and said, hey, these rooks right here and what they were doing in these videos is what everybody does, everybody, no matter what they're doing, and we're going to take those failures and those aspects, and we're going to turn everybody else in this crowd for what they do into generals, because I'm going to be behind the reins. As much as I'm bagging on them still, I'm bagging on them to improve not only them, but everybody else in this room, if they choose to watch it and understand it through those fields, through those forces, through those applications, and whatever variable that may come up in. So again, absolutely the most respect in the world for what you do and how you do it. Again, I'm one of your officers out here, hopefully trying to what I like to call point a hole into somebody's wall, so not so I can tear it down, so I can help patch it up, so I can say I put something into it, so I can, add that into mine, and hopefully improve yours. I think that's what we all do. Catch you on the next one.